Every shift in your life begins the moment you realize this. Power doesn't rise from what you know. It rises from what your signal can hold without collapsing. That's the real secret buried under every esoteric system, every initiatory path, every symbol people love to decode but never embody. The 33rd degree was never about hierarchy. It was about capacity, the ability to run more current through your inner circuit without burning yourself out or distorting the field around you. When I finally understood that, everything clicked. Most people don't lack potential, they lack voltage discipline. You've felt it before. A moment where something in you suddenly opens, a strange clarity floods in, and the world feels like it's obeying you without resistance. Then it fades, and you tell yourself it was just confidence or coincidence. But that wasn't psychology. That was a brief surge of unregulated charge. The human system is an electrical organism disguised as a personality. Emotions are currents, intent is a directive, focus is the switch. And your nervous system is the wiring that determines how much of your own power you're capable of accessing without short-circuiting into fear, anger, or indecision. What the old initiates understood, and what most modern seekers completely miss, is that higher knowledge is useless if the circuit carrying it is unstable. You can't run a high-grade signal through a tangled, leaking, overreactive system. It will either distort the message or blow out the channel altogether. That's why your breakthroughs don't last. That's why your visions collapse when pressure increases. That's why your potential flickers like a loose connection. The moment you see your inner life as a living circuit, you stop searching for secrets and start upgrading your capacity. Most people think their life collapses because of fate, timing, or other people, but the real collapse happens long before anything external shows up. It happens inside the micro-motions of your internal circuitry, the places where charge tries to move but gets trapped in old pathways you never questioned. A circuit doesn't fail because of voltage, it fails because of resistance. And in a human system, resistance shows up as unresolved emotional memory, chronic overthinking, and reflexive tension in the body that redirects your power into loops instead of forward movement. That's the mechanism nobody explains. Your system is constantly choosing between transmission and repetition. If you could watch your own field the way an engineer watches a board under a thermal camera, you'd see the same hotspots appear every time you face uncertainty or pressure. A spike of charge hits the system, maybe a sudden opportunity, maybe a conflict. And instead of routing that current cleanly toward action, the circuit bends. It arcs sideways into worry, self-doubt, comparison, or catastrophizing. Those aren't thoughts, they're discharge paths. They're the places where your wiring learned to handle overload by diverting energy into noise. And the moment the current leaks, your external reality mirrors the internal instability. Calls don't return. Plans get stuck. People misread your intention. Not because the world is against you, but because your signal went fuzzy for a moment. This is the hidden mechanic behind influence, luck, and timing. When your circuit is stable, even a small impulse of intent travels clean and hits reality like a command. When your circuit is unstable, even massive effort dissipates into static. That's why some people seem to move the world with minimal action. They're not pushing harder, they're transmitting cleaner. Stability creates force, coherence creates momentum, and the more you upgrade your internal wiring, the more you start experiencing synchronicity not as magic, but as electrical alignment between inner voltage and outer conditions. The old initiates encoded this truth into symbols, because people understand symbols long before they can understand their own circuitry. But once you see the mechanism directly, the symbols stop being mysterious and start being maps. And there's one part of this internal circuit almost nobody ever notices, yet it determines everything that happens next. Most people cling to the idea that awareness alone upgrades their life, but that belief is the biggest trap in modern spirituality. Awareness without rerouting is just surveillance. You're watching the same current burn through the same crooked pathway. The myth says, if I understand my patterns, they will dissolve. But circuits don't change by being observed. They change when you interrupt the automatic flow and redirect the charge deliberately. That's the part people avoid, because interruption feels like breaking character. Yet it's the only moment where real rewiring begins. Let me show you the mechanic through something you've definitely lived. Imagine you walk into a room after an argument that ended unresolved. Your chest feels tight, your jaw's already braced, and even before anyone speaks, your internal current is preloaded with tension. In that moment, the charge from the argument is still running the show. You think you're choosing your next words, but the circuit is choosing for you. Your tone sharpens, your patience collapses, You react to a signal that isn't even present anymore. That entire sequence is a rerun of old wiring, a loop firing the moment a familiar voltage enters the system. Here's the truth most people never see. Emotion doesn't stay where it started. It travels. It rewires. It creates shortcuts in your circuitry that become automatic response routes. And the more often those pathways fire, the more your nervous system treats them as the default route for any significant charge. That's why a single unresolved conflict can echo into your business decisions, your creative output, your relationships. The circuit doesn't understand context. It understands path of least resistance. This is why people think they're self-sabotaging. They're not. Their circuit is simply following the route that has been used the most, even if that route leads to collapse. And until you disrupt that route with conscious rechanneling, no amount of motivational talk or new habits will hold. The voltage will always return to the familiar path, because that's where the system feels safe, even when that safety destroys momentum. Once you grasp this, you stop trying to change outcomes and start changing pathways, because every new pathway becomes a new destiny. Calm isn't the absence of charge, it's the mastery of distribution. When your nervous system learns to route current instead of bracing against it, your entire signal becomes cleaner, sharper, and far more commanding. This is the piece most people ignore. Stability is not emotional softness, it's electrical precision. A stable circuit doesn't dampen voltage, it channels it with zero distortion. That's why the people who look the calmest under pressure often create the most dramatic shifts around them. Their wiring stays open, their current stays directed, their field stops leaking. Every reaction your body has, the tight throat before speaking, the heat in your chest when someone challenges you, the sudden rush of adrenaline before you make a decision, is simply voltage looking for a path. If the nervous system is tense, that voltage gets trapped and loops internally. That's when overthinking appears. That's when doubt becomes louder than instinct. That's when you feel like you're fighting yourself instead of the situation. But if the nervous system is relaxed and conductive, the same voltage becomes clarity. It becomes decisive movement. It becomes signal strength. Here's a simple practice I use: 30 to 45 seconds that reset the routing instantly. You'll feel it the moment you do it. Exhale first, not inhale. That's key. The exhale discharges the excess static that's already built up in the system. Slowly breathe out until the body wants to inhale on its own. When the inhale arrives, don't pull it in. Let it slide in without force. Then lower your shoulders by 2 millimeters, not more. That tiny drop tells your circuit, we're switching pathways. Now put your attention behind your sternum, as if the current flows forward through the chest instead of up into the head. Stay there for one slow breath cycle. What you just did was reroute voltage from the panic loop into the command channel. Try this right before speaking to someone who intimidates you. Try it before making a financial decision. Try it when you feel your voice shaking, but you still need to deliver the message. You'll notice something shocking. Clarity doesn't come from thinking, it comes from conductivity. And once the circuit stabilizes, reality begins to mirror that stability with almost eerie precision. Emotion is not a problem to solve, it's concentrated voltage waiting for assignment. Most people treat emotion like weather, something that arrives, hits them, and leaves them soaked in whatever state it carried. But in a circuit-based system, emotion is not weather. It's fuel. It's the raw charge that either powers your intention or blows out your wiring depending on how you route it. The old initiatory paths understood this long before psychology existed. A human being becomes dangerous, in the best sense, the moment they stop fearing their own emotional current and start converting it. Think of anger, not the explosive kind, but the quiet, focused burn that appears when someone crosses a line. That feeling isn't chaos. It's voltage with direction, trying to move through your system and into action. Most people shut it down because they're terrified of conflict, or they let it detonate because they never learned to distribute the charge. But if you channel that current into clarity, if you let it power your boundaries, your speech, your movement, it becomes one of the cleanest fuels you have. Anger is a surge. A surge is power. Power is neutral until you assign it. Same with grief. Grief is implosion energy, a collapsing inward current that tries to compress your entire field. If you resist it, the circuit buckles. If you let it collapse without guidance, you lose signal for days or months. But if you breathe into it, widen your internal space, and let that inward collapse become a stabilizing force rather than a suffocating one, grief becomes grounding energy. It makes your circuit heavier, steadier, more precise. Suddenly, the world stops pushing you around because you've become energetically dense. Even desire, the voltage that pulls you forward, becomes clean only when you stop confusing wanting with chasing. Desire is magnetic current. Chasing is leakage. The more coherent your desire, the more directly the charge moves toward the outcome, instead of dispersing into anxiety and impulsive action. You can feel the difference instantly. One expands you forward, the other scatters you sideways. Every emotional state is a waveform carrying usable power. The moment you assign that power consciously, you stop being reactive and start becoming directive. And once you learn to convert emotional charge into movement instead of distortion, you'll understand why some people's emotions build worlds while others' emotions destroy them. When your circuit is clean, your signal shapes your reality. But when your circuit is hijacked, reality starts shaping you. And most people don't even notice when it happens, because energetic hijack doesn't feel dramatic. It feels familiar. It feels like the subtle pull to suppress your voice, the sudden drain around specific people, the way your clarity dissolves in environments where you shrink without understanding why. Hijack is rarely an attack. It's a rerouting. Your current gets redirected into someone else's frame, someone else's expectations, someone else's emotional gravity. The mechanism is simple. Every field broadcasts its internal voltage, and unstable circuits automatically synchronize with the strongest nearby signal. Not the healthiest, the strongest. That's why one stressed person can warp an entire room. Why one manipulative presence can pull you into guilt, doubt, or hesitation within seconds. Why certain conversations leave you feeling like you betrayed yourself without ever being told what to do. Your system didn't get overpowered. It synced to a stronger waveform because you didn't anchor your own. Reclaiming command isn't about resisting other people. Resistance is just another form of entanglement. It's about reestablishing your signal as the dominant current in your own circuitry. And the fastest way to break hijack is not confrontation, it's reorientation. You shift the internal pathway that the external field is attempting to pull you into. Picture this. You're in a power struggle with someone who's trying to corner you verbally. Their tone gets sharper, their energy gets heavier, and suddenly your chest tightens. That tightening is the first sign the hijack is beginning. Their current is entering your system. Most people respond by defending themselves or shutting down, but that just locks the entanglement in place. Instead, drop your awareness 2 inches lower into the solar plexus and lengthen your exhale by half a second. That tiny shift pulls your voltage out of their frame and back into yours. You'll feel it, a subtle snap, like a wire popping back into its own circuit. Or imagine scenario number 2, creative burnout. You're trying to work, but nothing flows. You think it's exhaustion or lack of ideas, but it's actually a hijack from unresolved emotional residue. Part of your circuit is still plugged into a previous event, a conversation, a disappointment, an expectation, and the current meant for creativity is being siphoned off into an open loop. You can sense this when you feel mentally scattered but emotionally heavy. To break that loop, place your palm on your sternum and breathe into the pressure until it shifts from tight to warm. Warmth is a sign the current is returning to the main line. Only then do you try to create again. Once you learn to detect hijack, you stop mistaking external pressure for internal failure. You start treating every energetic pull as a signal. Re-anchor now. And the moment your circuit reclaims command, the entire field around you recalibrates, because nothing can override a system that has reconnected its own source voltage. Every circuit needs a toolkit, not for emergencies, but for precision. The higher the voltage you carry, the more crucial it becomes to refine how you route, reset, and shield your internal wiring. Most people only intervene when they're overwhelmed, but by then the circuit is already distorted. Power comes from micro-adjustments made before the system destabilizes. These tools aren't rituals, they're mechanics. They work because they change how charge actually moves. The first is breath code sync, not breathing to relax, breathing to tune. In a circuit metaphor, breath is the regulator that stabilizes current. Try this. Inhale through the nose for 4, hold for 2, exhale for 6. The longer exhale isn't about calm. It forces the voltage to smooth out along the main line instead of spiking into secondary loops like anxiety or impulsive action. Do this for 3 cycles and you'll feel your internal frequency tighten into coherence. Decisions become simpler because the noise stops receiving power. Next is charge reset. Anytime you feel your mind racing or your chest buzzing with unprocessed tension, place both feet flat on the ground and imagine the charge dropping downward instead of swirling. You're not grounding in a mystical sense. you're changing the direction of the electrical discharge. Circuits stabilize when excess voltage escapes through a controlled outlet. The body is no different. Drop the charge and your clarity returns in seconds. Then comes focus redirect. Every time your attention splits, your voltage splits. A divided signal loses impact, just like a circuit loses force when current diverts into multiple paths. Redirecting focus isn't about discipline, it's about rerouting. Pick one point, a task, a sentence, a person speaking, and imagine a thin line of current connecting your awareness to it. That line stops stray impulses from draining your energy sideways. You'll notice your presence becomes denser, sharper, harder to interrupt. Finally, the field seal. This isn't a wall, it's a closed circuit. Bring your awareness to the perimeter of your body, not imagining light, not visualizing armor, simply sensing the edges of your physical form. When you feel the shape of your own outline, your energy stops bleeding into external frames. A sealed circuit keeps its voltage. People with strong presence aren't intimidating, they're contained. Their charge stays inside the system, which makes the signal undeniably clear. When you start using these tools daily, even subtly, something shifts. Life stops feeling random and starts feeling programmable. Because the moment you control the circuit, you control the output. Every system has traps, not because someone set them, but because any circuit running higher voltage exposes its weak points. The moment you start carrying more charge, the leaks become obvious. You'll notice the first trap anytime you try to elevate your life: overforce. Pushing too hard is the human version of overheating a board. When you force an outcome, you're not transmitting power, you're burning wattage. Overforce creates a sharp, buzzing tension in the ribs, a sense of urgency that isn't instinct but distortion. The signal becomes jagged. People feel it. Opportunities recoil from it. Overforce doesn't create movement, it creates resistance. The fix is simple. Smooth the current, slow one breath cycle, relax one muscle. When the circuit softens, the outcome moves on its own. Then there's the opposite trap: under signal. You think you're being patient, but what you're actually doing is sending half-strength voltage. Indecision, hesitation, the fear of choosing wrong. These aren't mental problems, they're drops in current. A circuit with weak voltage can't command reality, so everything lags, stalls, drags. Under signal shows up as endless planning with no movement. The antidote is micro-commitment. Not a big decision, a tiny one. Stand up, move something on your desk, send a single message. Tiny actions increase current the way a small capacitor jumpstarts a system. Once the voltage rises, clarity follows automatically. Another trap is split intention. When you secretly want two opposing outcomes, your circuit tries to run charge down both paths and both short out. You'll feel this as emotional whiplash. Motivated one moment, exhausted the next. Certain, then confused. Inspired, then strangely numb. The system isn't broken, it's overloaded with contradictory commands. To fix it, pick which intention gets voltage today. Not forever, today. Circuits organize around immediacy. When you choose one direction, power consolidates and momentum returns. But the deepest trap is energetic leakage. It happens in conversations where you over-explain, in relationships where you shrink your truth, in tasks where you pour far more energy than the situation requires. Leakage feels like heaviness behind the sternum and a slight drop in temperature in your hands. If you notice that, stop speaking, stop typing, stop engaging for 3 seconds. That pause closes the circuit. When you re-engage, do it with half the emotional force. You'll feel your energy return instantly. These traps don't disappear as you evolve, you just learn to see them faster. And the more quickly you detect the distortion, the faster you reclaim your voltage, your clarity, and your direction. Integration isn't something you think about. It's something your circuit proves through motion. The real shift shows up not when you meditate, reflect, or analyze, but when you move through your day and your signal stays intact. Coherence must survive impact. It must hold while you're speaking, choosing, negotiating, creating, resisting old patterns, standing in pressure, or walking into situations that used to collapse your wiring. Integration is the moment your circuit stops defaulting to the past and starts behaving like the upgraded system you've been building. You'll notice it first in tiny moments. Someone interrupts you, and instead of bracing, your breath stays slow. That's coherence in motion. You walk into a room where you used to dim yourself, yet your posture remains open and your tone stays steady. That's voltage anchored. You sit down to work, and the old overwhelm tries to rise, but your focus locks onto one task and the static dissolves within seconds. That's rerouting becoming natural. None of this is dramatic. It's subtle, almost quiet, but the effect is unmistakable. You're no longer negotiating with your own circuitry. You're operating it. The real test comes when life accelerates, when opportunity arrives faster than expected, when pressure hits from multiple angles, when someone challenges your identity or pulls on an old emotional wire. The upgraded circuit doesn't escape these moments. It uses them. High-voltage situations reveal your stability. They amplify your clarity instead of distorting it. You make decisions with a calm intensity. You speak with precision. You move without second-guessing. Action becomes clean. Presence becomes heavy. People feel the difference instantly. And there's a deeper layer. The environment begins to respond differently. Invitations come without you chasing. Conflicts resolve without escalation. Ideas land in your mind fully formed. You walk through life with a sense of gravitational pull rather than effort. This isn't magic. It's electrical alignment between your internal signal and the external field. When the circuit stays coherent long enough, the world begins to orbit around that coherence. But there is one shift, quiet but seismic, that emerges only after sustained integration. A moment where you realize your reality isn't just responding to you, it's reorganizing itself around you. Most people separate their power into categories: money, relationships, purpose, as if each domain follows different rules. But once your circuit stabilizes, you realize every domain bends to the same electrical principle. The strongest, cleanest signal organizes the environment. Not metaphorically, mechanically. Each area of your life simply reveals a different way your voltage interacts with external systems. Take money. People think money follows logic, strategy, or hustle, but those are secondary. Money follows coherence. When your internal signal is scattered, opportunities slip, negotiations warp, timing misfires. But when your circuit is clean, something strange happens. Financial openings appear not because you chase them, but because your clarity makes you visible. Money is like a sensor. It detects stable circuits. Think back to a time you were financially stuck, not because you lacked skill, but because every decision felt foggy, hesitant, full of static. That wasn't mindset. It was low voltage. But in a high voltage state, you take one action and it cascades. One message leads to 3 openings. One idea becomes a full pathway. Money doesn't come to you. It synchronizes with your level of electrical order. Relationships shift even more dramatically. When your circuit is unstable, you attract people who amplify your distortions, those who drain you, undervalue you, or entangle you in emotional loops you can't exit. Not because you're weak, but because unstable circuits pair with unstable circuits. But once your signal stabilizes, the entire social field reorganizes. People who used to overpower you suddenly lose their leverage. Manipulative patterns can't hook into your wiring because the voltage no longer bends around them. Healthy people feel drawn to you without you trying. Conversations deepen. Boundaries hold themselves. You stop performing and start transmitting, and people feel the difference immediately. Purpose becomes clearer not because you find it, but because the noise stops blocking the current that was always trying to move through you. Purpose is not a dream. It's a direction of flow. When the static dissolves, the direction becomes obvious. You don't think about your path. You feel the pull of it the way a current finds the easiest route through a circuit. Now picture scenario number 3. You're about to make a major life decision. A move, a partnership, a leap. Old wiring would have drowned you in doubt. But now your body stays open. The voltage rises without shaking you. You feel a precise, quiet certainty. That's not confidence. That's electrical alignment between inner intention and outer reality. And when that alignment locks in, the world shifts around you to meet it. Sovereignty isn't rebellion. It's electrical independence. It's the moment your circuit no longer bends to external voltage, internal loops, or inherited patterns. Most people think sovereignty is about becoming untouchable, but that's not it. True sovereignty is the ability to remain unchanged while everything around you shifts, pulls, tests, or tempts you to collapse into old pathways. It's the state where your system stops asking the world for permission to hold its own signal. You feel the first layer of sovereignty when your reactions stop being automatic. Someone projects their frustration onto you, and instead of absorbing it, your circuit stays closed. The charge hits, but it doesn't enter. It bounces. Your breath stays steady, your tone stays grounded, and your intention remains intact. That's not detachment. That's controlled voltage. The external field no longer overrides your internal settings. The next layer arrives when old emotional triggers lose their gravitational pull. What used to throw you into spirals now barely creates a ripple, not because you've become numb, but because the circuit has rerouted the pathways that once carried overload. You can feel intensity without distortion. You can feel desire without desperation. You can feel anger without losing precision. This is the territory where people mistake you for cold, when really you're just electrically disciplined. But the deepest layer, the one the old initiates protected the most, is when your field becomes self-referencing. You no longer run your voltage through external validation, outcomes, or approval. Your system generates its own feedback loop. You act because the action feels electrically correct, not because someone agrees or disagrees. You speak because the signal rises authentically, not because you're trying to shape a reaction. This is the moment where influence stops being something you chase and becomes something you emanate effortlessly. And here's the paradox. The more sovereign you become, the more reality cooperates. Not because you dominate it, but because your signal is finally stable enough to guide it. People feel your presence as a kind of clarity. Environments shift to meet your frequency. Situations bend toward your intention without force. Sovereignty is not about becoming powerful over the world. It's about becoming unhackable within it. Everything in your life changes the moment you realize you are not a mind trying to navigate a world. You are a circuit shaping it. Every thought, every breath, every emotional surge, every moment of clarity or collapse has been part of one ongoing electrical architecture that has always been yours to command. And once you see it, truly see it, the old way of living feels impossibly small. You stop chasing outcomes. You stop collapsing under pressure. You stop bending your voltage to fit into frames that were never designed for your current. Picture your entire system as a vertical column of wiring, lit from within, running from the soles of your feet to the center of your skull. Every experience, every person, every choice is another connection point along that column. When your circuit is leaking, the light flickers. When you're overwhelmed, the current spikes. When you're shrinking yourself, the current dims. But when the wiring is clean, when the system is sealed, aligned, and moving a steady charge, the whole column glows like a conduit. You don't just feel grounded, you feel inevitable. This is the real Masonic understanding hidden beneath symbols and stories. The world does not respond to your wishes, it responds to your voltage. And when your voltage is coherent, the world has no choice but to reorganize itself around the signal you hold. If you've ever walked into a room and felt the atmosphere shift before you even spoke, you've already tasted this. If you've ever had a moment of absolute certainty that cut through all doubt, you've already touched it. And if you've ever felt your presence sharpen so intensely that others fell silent, that was your circuit revealing its true capacity. Tell me in the comments, when was the exact moment you felt your internal signal take over a situation, even if just for a second?